the meeting. I'll wait until the live stream starts. And hopefully we're all going to be in order and behave ourselves. And we'll read the standing orders and we'll read them and understand them as the advice goes. So 15921 to receive and note apologies for absence.
One apologies from Brett Collard. That's not right at all. Brett Collard's not here. Jessica has sent apologies. Jessica Webb.
In order and behave ourselves. We'll read the standing. Okay, and then we've got 16021 to receive declarations of interest. So anybody with any personal interest on any items on the agenda? Anybody with any prejudicial interest in any items on the agenda? And anyone with any pecuniary interests? No? Okay, so 16121 is public participation, and we've got Nick and Carol Baker who want to speak to the planning application that we'll be discussing later on in the meeting. So over to you to speak, and we'll then see if we've got any questions for any of the councillors.
Lovely, thank you. So apologies if this sounds a little bit clunky. I'm not used to doing this, so I'm going to be basically reading out something that I've written. It's in support of my application for a garage with an annex above at 10 Ely Road, Sutton. Firstly, I would like to make you aware that this is the second planning application for our property, the first being for an independent dwelling in what is currently our back garden. This was largely for the purposes of housing family members, namely my elderly father-in-law, but going forward to be available for our children as well. As you are probably aware, the application was turned down, although Sutton Parish Council adopted a neutral stance on it. We were advised to appeal. However, given timescales involved in this, we feel family events might dictate that things are done sooner. With this in mind, we've decided to submit a householder application for an annex, which we believe should be more straightforward. We've clearly had to make a lot of compromises from our original plans. The annex will need to be built above a double garage, as the building will displace my existing garage. As there has been some comment from neighbours on the matter, I feel it is now necessary for me to have a voice at the parish meeting. A lot of reference has been made to the reasons for refusal of the previous planning application. I feel this is largely irrelevant, as this is a householder application and the criteria for the previous application as a full application would have been different. However, I will address some of the comments made. Firstly, visual dominance of the street scene. I can't see anybody, but am I still being heard?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right, okay. A proposal of a garage with an annex above is considerably smaller in both footprint and height than the original application. Contrary to what has been suggested, it would not be large enough to convert to a house at a later date. The internal usable area of the new design, including the garage area, would only be around 63 square metres. This does take into account the void areas due to the pitch of the roof. This is less than half the initial house design, which was around 131 square metres of total usable area. We realise, referring to the plans, the annex space itself is not particularly large. However, it's designed to be an adjunct to our main house and not accommodation in its own right, as our needs have now changed. The external appearance would be consistent with other extensions and indeed garages in the area. It is intended to carry out construction in a manner that mirrors the host dwelling as close as possible. It should be pointed out that around 50% of the properties in the immediate area have already been significantly extended, in many cases by far more in terms of square meterage than I am proposing for our property. It should also be noted that our property is yet to be extended in any way. The original application was said to have been overbearing and overshadowing to neighbouring occupiers. This has been taken on board. However, it was in particular reference to number 10, our own property. Had we been granted planning permission for a separate property, we would have become neighbours. As it's now going to be the same property, we feel that that argument's largely negated. There have been objections to increased parking on Park Road. I would like to point out that we have ample off-street parking of our own and do not need to use Park Road for parking. It should also be noted that on the previous application, Highways raised no objections. With regard to suggested groundwater issues, there is no factual basis on this, as the land in question is partially concreted anyway, and block paving, as suggested, would have no further effect on this. In the 17 years we've lived at the property, I've not been aware of any flooding issues at Park Road or Ely Road, as suggested in the comments. To address the comments of setting a precedent, I would like to remind you that we're talking about a garage with an annex above. This is not something every household is going to require. Our location, with the garden running alongside Park Road, puts us in a unique position to do this, the only other property being number 9 opposite. Lastly, with regard to the comment of not in keeping, I would argue that this is 1930s ex-local authority housing. If you regard the original street scene as being symmetrical and consistent, that argument was nullified the day the first person was granted permission to extend their home. We feel we have made some large compromises in an attempt to balance the needs of neighbours with our own. And lastly, we are trying to provide additional space for ourselves and our family and see this as an opportunity to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have any councillors got any questions they'd like to ask Nick while he's still in the meeting? Bob, yes.
Hopefully you can hear me now. Now I've unmuted myself.
That's better, yeah.
Can I just ask a quick question? I've looked very briefly at the plans, and is the annex over the top of the double garage, would that be a separate building as opposed to the main property?
Well, it's not actually going to be joined on to the main property, no. But it's going to be regarded as our first application was for a house, for an individual house, which could have been separated. This is going to be part of this property and it won't be able to be separated. It will be regarded as part of our property, which is why we're going for a householder application.
I don't understand the phrase householder application.
Well, a householder application means it belongs within the curtilage of the property that you're building. So, for example, what we're proposing before would have created an entirely new house, which the neighbours didn't like because we could have possibly sold it and created another house.
Yeah.
This is going to be a garage with an annex above, which belongs to this house. So it won't, as a householder application, it won't be able to be separated. It will always be part of this property.
But not physically connected to.
Not physically connected, no. We want the privacy, which is why it's down the bottom of the garden.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody with any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much then.
Okay, no problem.
And we'll, yeah, if you can sort of leave the meeting now, and then we will get onto that item. We've got a few other things to run through before we get there, so so probably the next 15 to 30 minutes or so.
That's great, thank you. Do I press something or do you eject me? I'm not sure. I think we need to press something.
I can eject you if that's the easier thing.
Yeah, if you could eject us, please.
The type.
We're not very soon.
Okay, so now we move to 16221 matters for information only. And this was the Ooze Washers footpath closure information. But I've got some hot off the press news. So if you look at the map that we had distributed, well, there was already an error there, which it showed that the footpath that runs beside the anchor that's indicated as closed that's been open since the middle of last year. But the footpath, I think it's footpath number 7, that runs on the far side of the Old Bedford River. So if you go over the second bridge and turn left down to Erith, that was inspected today and is now, as of this afternoon, it's been fully open. And so the only bit that's actually closed is the footpath going up to Meeple, not saying on the middle level barrier bank. It's because they've still got further work to do on the section between Sutton Gould and Welch's Dam. And I can confirm it's all open because I walked as far as Jolly Bankers Bridge and bumped into some people who'd walked from Erith. So there's at least one set of people who've walked that length today or this afternoon. That's the only information we've got. So 16321 to approve the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 26th of January 2021. Has anybody got any corrections to the minutes? Bob?
Yeah, it appears that I actually wasn't attending the meeting, but I actually left it. So that was quite clever.
Ah, okay. So you're missing from the attendance, but
Yes.
your departure was noted. Okay, so that's quite a feat. So I think we will amend that to people are happy with that. Can I see a proposer for the minutes then with that amendment to acknowledge Bob's presence? Oh, Bob, yeah, and a seconder. Sheila, I think, was first. Can I see those in favour of approving the minutes? Any against? And any abstentions? I can't see Steve, so I don't know if you were how Steve would have been voting. So if you can hear us, I think Steve is having some connection problems. I will wait and just give him an opportunity to comment on the minutes if he can rejoin the meeting. Steve, can you hear us? Aha, there he is. Can you hear us now, Steve?
Could send a text message, Chairman.
Yeah, I think that's going to help at the moment. I think let's give him a few seconds to see if he can get his audio working. I would suggest that was, I think, did we have everyone in favour of that who voted, Rosie?
Yes, it would have been a carried decision even without hearing from Steve.
So I suggest we move on because, yes, that wouldn't, however Steve votes, that won't change the result. So then we're on to note and to receive and note the resolution action chart, so 16421. Anybody got any questions on the resolution action chart? No? Okay, so we're just noting that. And then we're 16521 to receive reports in relation to Sutton from, first of all, Lorna as the county councillor. Is there anything you want to add to your county council report, Lorna?
Yes, if I may, there are a few things to update on. Clearly, the county council budget was discussed and voted on Tuesday last week, so there is now a county council budget, which to nobody's surprise will be the one proposed by the Conservative group. So that one is set. Flooding, obviously lots happening still, so plenty to report in the near future, and I'm hoping to have a chance to converse with the county council's local lead flood authority person next week about the situation locally at St Andrew's Close, the Orchards and the Linden Homes or Vistry development. Lancaster Way roundabout I've been spending an inordinate amount of time with, because it's been quite horrendous with that, because the arrangements that have been made include sending 150 to 250 vehicles for people working on the site down Bedwell Hay Lane first thing in the morning and then out again at night. Bedwell Hay Lane beyond the gate actually is a bridle way, so you've got an extra 500 vehicle movements potentially over a bridle way, which nobody has consulted anybody about. And then I'm getting complaints as well from cyclists, from people with children about the inadequate signage about how safely to negotiate the works with a bicycle or a pram or whatever. So I'm dealing with that as well. Lots of concerns about the way in which all of that is being organised. So that's taking up a huge amount of my time. Local elections, we have heard from the government that as far as they're concerned, they are going ahead on the first Thursday in May. And we have still heard nothing, as far as I know, from the government about whether or not they're going to release the £45 million for affordable housing to the combined authority. I can't hear you, Mark, you're on mute.
So Sheila, I saw indicating, so I assume Sheila had a question.
Just a point, someone I know in Sutton set off to go to Ely by bike and gave up and came home again because she couldn't find her way through.
Yes.
That's not an uncommon experience, yes? Sorry, did you hear me, Lorna?
Sorry, my internet's rather unstable. Yes, that's certainly the situation. People at Witchford have said exactly the same thing, that they've got up there, tried to negotiate their way around safely and given up and gone home because it is not possible to do so. So yes, so I'm liaising with the project manager, with the senior people at the county council, trying to liaise with the combined authority, who are the fund holders for this. I've had a load of stuff back this evening in relation to somebody else's set of questions about all of this, but not the email I sent today. And there is an extraordinary meeting of Sutton Parish Council next week, which will be considering all of this, among other things. But it's been probably, apart from the BP roundabout, probably the worst impact of works I've seen in terms of just not catering at all for active travellers who need to use it, or indeed residents nearby.
Brian.
Yeah, Lorna, you'll be aware because you know the area. There are two simple diversions around it, neither of which are signed at the moment. It's either Grundy Fen out to the A10 and up, or it's out Coveney and in from the top. And if motor vehicles were encouraged to use either of those two, depending on their eventual destination, it would make things a whole lot easier for people on horses, bicycles, or walkers.
It won't happen because the county policy is not to formally divert traffic onto a road that is a lower grade of road than the one they are working on. So if they're working on an A road, they won't divert you onto a B or a C road formally. Obviously, people with local knowledge or with sat-navs will work out that that's a way to go, but the council policy formally is that they will not encourage or sign people to use lesser grade roads.
So the proposal that they made either last month or the month before to downgrade the main road in the event of remedial work having to be done at that roundabout, as remedial work was done some years ago on the, or last year I think, on the BP roundabout, would actually make it easier, because they could then, under their own rules, divert people out the way a pragmatic solution to this would be working now.
Sorry, I didn't quite.
I believe you said that the Ely to Meeple main road was going to be downgraded to a B road in a previous report. Is that correct?
The proposal is to downgrade the A1123 from Haddenham down, Haddenham down to Erith and on Bluntisham and so on.
Right. So the fact that common sense might suggest diverting traffic, there is a plan in place or a protocol in place that actually forbids that.
That's correct. They will not formally divert onto a lower grade road. However, they have the county council has spoken with Grovemere and negotiated the use of Bedwell Hay Lane, which including giving on to Grovemere's land at the end of Bedwell Hay Lane to do that. Now, that's not a formal diversion, but it is what the staff are instructed to do. And it's causing no end of problems.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, that's my bit. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
something entirely different. I noticed in your county council report, Lorna, a reference to a air monitor adaptation at Littleport.
Oh, yes.
With
yes,
screened classrooms.
Yes.
I can hear Jess urging me on to ask this question, if nobody else, in terms of it sounds almost too good to be true. Is this kosher, or can you give us any more information about its accuracy?
It is, as I said, it's used to detect diseases on chicken farms, this technology at the moment. I don't know a huge amount about it, but this company that produced this, basically the principle is, as I understand it, that if you have the virus or, you know, the diseases in chickens, but they've managed to work this through to work for COVID, that your body exudes chemicals that then can be picked up by these sensors in the air, non-invasively. That sounds really interesting. And as I said in my report, they expect to start production in the spring. Who will take that up and in what way, and particularly how, for example, public bodies, semi-public bodies such as schools take that up, will be a whole level of interest. But I know no more than that at the moment, and the policy for whether or not that's going to be used, I don't even know how much it costs. I gather it doesn't cost a huge amount to maintain.
It's relying upon a chemical being given off by somebody who's got COVID. It's not a virus particle filter.
No.
Okay.
No. That's the limit of my scientific knowledge on anything really, but on this in particular.
Well, I know HN51, whatever it was, the avian flu virus was somewhat similar to the coronavirus in some ways.
Yeah.
So it had some sort of understanding in terms of the bird flu epidemic and the coronavirus epidemic. Thank you, Lorna. I think we'll watch this space.
Well, absolutely. I thought that was just interesting and something really to be proud of locally if that takes off. Yeah.
Presumably it's the same principle by which you can train dogs to sniff COVID, which they've done in Germany quite successfully.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on detecting COVID or anything else?
I'm afraid I'm
Okay.
going to have to leave you now because I have got another meeting to get to at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to have to make a move.
Okay, so we'll move to the district council report. There's just a couple of things I was going to add. So the first one that came up was the Elam Business Park. So we've had a couple of weekends ago. I think now we've had a sort of repeat of the problems we had with the sort of boy races on the roundabout. I think at the time I'm just trying to see what we said in the report. We talked about, or the police were trying to see whether they got any, could get any additional resources. They weren't directly successful in that, but it has been added to the sites that they include in their sort of COVID patrols, because irrespective of the antisocial behaviour, it's also in breach of the COVID regulations at the moment. The other thing that's happening more slowly, but is moving forward, is that there's a plan to put it together effectively an injunction that covers the whole of the county for this sort of behaviour, which will give police more powers to act. The last update we were given on that was last week, that they were waiting for a date for the court hearing for that. So I think that's going to take a while before that comes through. The other thing other part where we have got some more information now, so there was reference to the district council budget. That meeting is a week today, and so the papers for that meeting were issued yesterday. So the proposal there that's coming from the administration there is for a council tax freeze. It does still have those figures that were mentioned of a budget shortfall. So to put it in context, so last year when the budget was fixed, the subsequent 2 years were balanced, and there was a £3.3 million saving needed for year 3. This year, then, with the budget that's proposed, only the first year is balanced. Around about £50,000 worth of savings, 53,000 are needed the year after, but that goes to a massive 4.6 million in the following year. And to put that into context, the overall net operating expenditure for the council is 10.5 million, so it's 4.6 million out of 10.5. That will be debated, as I said, at next Tuesday. I don't think there's anything else that's changed since the report was issued. Has anybody got any questions on the district council? Bob? You're muted, Bob.
Been reading my standing orders. Right. The net revenue expenditure for the district council, 10.5 or 12 or whatever it is, and this is without taking into account any financial reports at all from the trading company. And I really do struggle, however successful or otherwise the trading company may be, how a council can set a budget without not knowing a major component of its income or expenditure. It sounds absolutely ludicrous to me. I've often been critical of the trading company and the amount of loans and the lack of repayment and transparency in their accounting. And this is another case of, well, make a best guess, I suppose. But as a district councillor, Mark, can you give us any light on that subject?
Not an awful lot. All I can say is the assumption at the moment is that within that, what's called the medium term financial plan horizon, there's no income assumed from the trading company.
Quite right.
That's the basis on which that shortfall comes about. But clearly, to close that gap, it would need a substantial income the year after next, essentially, or within the next 2 years.
Are any other loans anticipated for the trading company to make the financial situation even worse for the district council?
We don't know. The expectation is that they don't, but we don't have the latest reports from the trading company, so we don't know for sure. There was, trying to think now, I think it was the meeting in July last year. There was an extension made to the terms of the loan. But that is factored in. And that was the consequence of the slower sort of development due to COVID.
Okay.
But I'm not aware. We're not aware of any other changes. That doesn't mean that there aren't any other changes.
Good luck.
But yeah, it does, and the difficulty with just keeping the council tax the same year after year, it compounds the problem, and you can never catch up because of the limitation that's put on how much you can increase the council tax. So either there has to be significant savings in the next few years, or significant new income, which isn't yet identified, or some combination of the two. Otherwise, the numbers won't balance in in particular in 2022-23. That's when the large gap comes about. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Andrew?
Yeah, just on the garden close, we spoke about it last time, the tree preservation order. I see you and Lorna wrote to the residents in the local area. I just wondering if you know, was there much take up? Did the residents respond to that and write to the council?
I don't know is the honest answer. We can follow up and see how many responses. I know there were a number of residents who have written, but I don't know what the total number is. I'll see what I can find out about that. Any other questions? If not, then we go on to 16621 finance. So first of all, we've got to the only thing we've got is to approve the payments. So we've got some numbers to fill in.
Yes, we have, Chairman. The first one is the salary payments and expenses for February. That's a total of £7,910.44. The second one is the LGSS, the pension, £810.27. And then under direct debits on section B, the People's Pension, £151.33.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions on any of those payments? If not, I'll propose that we approve those payments. Is there I think Brian was first there with the seconder. Can I see those in favour of approving the payments? Looks unanimous. Excellent. Okay, so 16721 planning. So first of all, we've got two planning approvals. So 20-0-1565 FUL 26 Sutton Court. That was proposed single-storey rear extension, front porch alteration and internal alterations. And then the other one was not actually a planning approval as such, it was a certificate of lawlessness. So that's 20-0-1697 CLP 44 The Row, Sutton loft conversion utilising existing roof space, removal of one chimney breast and other internal alterations. And then number two, planning refusals, there are none. And that brings us to planning applications. So the first one of those is 21-00074 FUL 10 Ely Road, Sutton, and that's where we had the applicant who addressed the meeting earlier on. So that's a sort of erection of a double garage with an annex above. So I think the distinction the applicant was trying to make was that the previous application there was for effectively a separate property. This is a applicant by the householder to develop an annex in their existing curtilage. Does anybody have any comments that anyone wants to make? Brian?
I thought it was a very fair representation. I do see there's a fairly fine line between what's separate accommodation and what is a separate house. However this is judged by the planning authority, it seems to me that it is not a large development at the property. So it seemed a perfectly reasonable representation that the owner made.
Anyone with any other comments? So do we want to, we can either just leave it to the district council, we can make a, I guess we can make a comment to say that we are supportive of it. And no one, the other options, which I don't think we're countenancing, are that we either want to refuse it or to or recommend it's refused or for modifications. Do we want to have to make a positive comment, or just to leave it to the district? I think those are the two options we really have. Brian?
As the person who made the comment, I'd be happy to leave it with planning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with
Bob?
I was just going to agree with Brian. I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? I do commend the parishioners coming forward and explaining the ins and outs of the design. I'm not a planner. I can't possibly comment about the future and what a separate dwelling is going to mean, whether it's a household property or not a household property. I think it's best left to the district council, and to reiterate the same policy as we showed on the first application on this site, which was to leave it to the planning authority on that occasion.
Yeah, I think if any move to make it a separate property would require a new planning application. And yeah. Okay, so nothing we need to capture there. The next one then is 21000101 ADI 20 Ely Road, Sutton, and that's the address of the co-op. And that's one set of face illuminated letters on rails, one set of non-illuminated subtext, one set of face illuminated rails, letters on rails, one set of face illuminated letters on rails, lots of those around different sides of the building. So actually those are just the illuminated and non-illuminated letters that I think are actually already there, that are on the front and the side and the back of the building. And then there's a non-illuminated double-sided totem sign, which looking at the plans goes on the entrance to the car park. We've got any concerns with that, or happy with that? Okay. Then I'll go to the next one, which is 2100107 FUL 2 Cherry Rise, Sutton, a ground floor side extension. Again, anyone with any concerns about that? Happy to leave that to the planners. Okay, and then there are no tree work applications and consents, so we don't need to read through those. 16821 committees and working parties. First one of those is the finance control working party that was held on the 2nd of February. So we've got the notes of the meeting, and then we've got some environments to approve. Anybody got any questions or clarifications on the notes of the meeting? If not, I'll move to the recommendations. So these environments, this is where on the listed budget headings, we've the expenditure for the year has exceeded those headings, and as a consequence of that, we via money from the contingencies to cover those costs. So we'll do that one first, and then we'll move to the financial risk management reports. I think that probably needs a little bit more discussion and explanation. Anybody got any questions on those environments? If not, I'll propose that we make those firements. Can I see a seconder for that? Helen was first, I think. I see those in favour of making those firements. Unanimous.
Thank you.
And I'll ask the clerk to give us a quick explanation of what the financial risk management report is, because I think it's important we understand that what that is before we come to decide on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a report that the council reviews each year, and it's to make sure that the council is covering its duty for its financial affairs. There's quite a lot of elements to it. It's in relation to the actual figures of the accounts, but it also covers the management of the accounts, how we actually audit ourselves to make sure that everything is correct, how we then move on with the internal auditor and then on to the external auditing of the accounts. It also covers and makes sure that we have adequate insurance in place to cover any loss of money or any failures to keep proper records. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of sections to it, with the risks on the left-hand side, the hazards down the middle, and then the control, which is how we actually try and mitigate any hazards. The next column is about the timing, as to how often we do that. And then the working party had quite a lengthy discussion on each line about the likelihood of the occurrence and the impact that it would have on the council should that occurrence occur. Now, we actually use a computer program that calculates the risk value, and anything that puts it on above 3 flags up that it is really an issue we need to be looking at, saying we've got a problem. So that's sort of how it works. And as I said, the working party did go through each area quite thoroughly. So it's if anybody's got any questions or anything else they wish to add, or if they think that we might have assessed some of the risks not as it ought to be, then we can have that discussion.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions or queries on any of the items in the financial management risk report? If not, then I'll propose that we accept or that we approve that. Seconder Bob. I saw Bob Hogg's hand go up first. I see those in favour of that. Those against?
Sorry, can I just confirm where Councillor Goodjohn was? Are you against on the?
You're muted, Brendan.
I was trying to scan the screen and his arm had gone down before I caught where it was.
Yes.
Voted for. Thank you very much. That's unanimous then, Chairman.
Unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
So then we move to the neighbourhood plan working party. So I gave a quick verbal update at the last meeting because it was the day immediately before the full council meeting. But so now you've got the notes for the meeting that essentially say the same thing in more detail that I'd verbally reported. Has anybody got any questions on the notes of the meeting? Bob, you're muted, Bob. You're still muted, Bob. Bob, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Well, that was it. No. It was. I've read the reports that ACOM have done on other parishes in Bury St Edmunds, I think, and there's no mention of climate change in any of their modelling or design criteria for the parish. I can understand the attraction of getting something done to, I suppose, beef up our neighbourhood plan, and it seems a very timely bit of work. But I would have thought in the current time we might well have had some evidence in terms of design criteria with a view at least as to how insulation or heating should be employed. And nor was there any mention, given it's a traffic working party on Thursday, about the electric vehicle charging points that a neighbourhood might wish to provide. So there were a couple of pointers I thought might be of interest to raise with them if we were to appoint them.
So my understanding is the design code is a fairly narrowly defined document in terms of the build and look of the buildings. But what we've asked for is the other thing that's already happening is the Ian Poole, the planning consultant that we used on the original neighbourhood plan, we're using again. He's reviewing the neighbourhood plan all of the policies with some recommendations and ideas on what we could change. And as part of that, we asked him to look at what we could do around climate change and biodiversity. So he'll come back. The expectation is he'll come back with some ideas on what we can do around new or existing, modified policies to address those elements. The two things we're asking you to do is this housing needs survey, which is an assessment of obviously the number of homes and the type of homes that we need in the village, and this design code. So our expectation is that our planning consultant will come back with other ideas in terms of what we can do around those other areas. The other thing just to bear in mind there, we can only do that within the constraints of the local plan. So there are certain things. Recently, the district councils had a supplementary planning document on climate change, but again, that was restricted. A number of consultees came back with proposals they would like to see, but those couldn't be done within the confines of the existing local plan. So there are some constraints there, but we should have a better understanding of what we can and can't do in that regard when we hear back from we get the report back from Ian Poole.
Thank
you. Any other questions on the notes of the meeting before I come to the recommendation? Andrew?
Just, you mentioned it at the end of the housing needs assessment.
Yeah.
Would that be similar? I thought Cambridge Acre did sort of a similar process when they was looking at housing sites and they sent a survey. I was wondering, can we
so they were looking specifically at their needs for effectively for affordable housing or affordable social housing. The housing needs survey is something that is done to look at all of the housing requirements. There's a figure, or the district council has to do that assessment as part of their local plan. And when we created the original neighbourhood plan, they were working on an update to the local plan that was subsequently abandoned, but we were able to use the work they'd done for an update to the local plan in our figures. But this is a survey that looks over all housing types in the context of the national sort of requirements. So it's a little bit different. And I think the expectation is that we'll see that we'd expect, given what we already have in the neighbourhood plan, the expectations would be broadly covering what the need is, and potentially even exceeding certainly looking to the local plan, exceeding what was required there. But we won't know until we've got that survey. And both of those things we can we can request from locality at no cost, which is also good news. If there are no other questions, so then we have the recommendation. So there's two parts to that. One is this housing needs survey. That's an input that we have to have if we're reviewing the plan. We have to have some a document that has researched what the housing needs are to show that the neighbourhood plan fulfills that. The design code is something we don't have to have, but a number of neighbourhood plans have more recently adopted design codes, and given it wasn't at any cost, there's no cost to prepare it, we thought it was a good initiative to ask, to request that the locality goes ahead and does that, and then we can judge at the time whether or not we want to make that part of an updated neighbourhood plan. And as I discussed earlier, we also will separately to these requests to locality, we'll be looking at that review of the other policies based on what our planning consultant tells us. So anybody got any questions specifically on the recommendation, or have we already covered those? Okay, if not, I'm going to propose that we do approach locality to prepare those two documents, the housing needs survey and a design code. Do I have a seconder for that? Stan, I saw first. I see those in favour of doing that. That's unanimous again.
Yeah.
Okay. And 16921 diary dates. So we've got the Village Hall committee meeting on the 2nd of March at 7:30, and then the EPR joint meetings. That's the straw burning power station, 1 p.m. on the 15th of April, and we've got nominated representatives for that. Can you remind us, Rosie, who attends the EPR meeting on behalf of the Parish Council?
I
might put you on the spot.
I think it's Brett. I did email out. See, I can't remember. I think Brett's. Was it Brett and Bob?
I think it's Brett and Bob. Yes. Yeah.
Brett and Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be there wearing my district councillor's hat.
Such a long time ago that we had the meeting. What I'm actually going to do is I will put an item on the March agenda so that we could discuss as a council if you've got any comments or concerns you'd like our representatives to take to the meeting in April.
Good. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Okay, and then 17021, date of the next meeting, so that's the 23rd of March 2021. And with that, I'll end the meeting. Okay, and we've finished.